Greetings, one and all, and welcome to another edition of the Dinner Club Jamboree. This week we have titled it Jam4Beach. Beach is not a place that we're referring to with the title of this video. Beach is a person. Um, his YouTube handle used to be CEH Beach, and I believe that might have been his Twitter handle as well. And Michael, you've met Beach personally, haven't you, back in the day?
Yes. Me and a few other YouTubers met him personally. I stayed at his place, his brother's place, for about 2 weeks, visiting people in Texas that were all YouTubers. And so he went along. Shayra's met him. Uh,
Exiled and Brian met him.
um, I think while they were in Texas, but separate from me.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
Schizophrenic Queen was with me during that leg of my trip, so she stayed there at his place as well. We made videos to a shrine of William Shatner at Bionic Dance. Um, yeah, he met a lot of people in the community down there in Texas.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm always up for meeting people in person whenever I can from the old YouTubes, you know. And sorry, what you say?
Uh, yeah,
All right, fair enough. No, but you know, it's not the kind of thing I'm really in a position. I haven't had a car of my own for like since 1989, right? So it's been a while. So therefore, getting around, even if someone was like relatively local to me, I'd have to say, you know, I'd take some organizing to do. And I don't even know if I know any people from my channel who are sort of like from Northern California. Not very. It's been such a long time since I've been on my channel anyway. People probably forgot who I am. But
a
anyway,
lot of us have stories about Beach, but one in particular that I have to share has to do with this dollar bill.
that exact dollar bill.
This exact dollar bill. Uh,
Okay.
this actually belonged to Beach's brother, who preceded him in death a couple of years ago. And Beach remembered that I used to cross out the T on the back of the dollar bills where it said "In God We Trust," and I made it say "In God We Rust." And so he sent me this that his brother had held on to, which it precedes when they put "In God We Trust" on the dollar bill. This is a really old one.
Oh
It
wow.
even has like a little silver thing right there where you can like trade this in for actual silver.
It's a
Right.
silver
But
certificate.
Silver certificate. Yeah.
Silver certificate.
but it did not have "In God We Trust" back then. So
I was going to say the front of it looked funny, and I was going to ask if it was a silver certificate because that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
yeah, this was
The front-
1935.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the whole reason why his brother held on to it was
Good shape.
because of the lack of that motto on the back.
It's in really good shape.
Knowing that I would keep it. Yeah. And then his brother passed away about a year ago. He moved up to Washington to take care of his mom, and then she passed away. And so the reason why we are 2 months after his death, like really just like learning about it, is because everybody in his life that cared about him preceded him in death. Everyone who would have set up like an obituary. So he had seen pretty much a lot before he died.
Yeah,
So how did you actually find out then, Michael? I mean, what was the chain of events that led to you finding out? Were you seeking the information,
So
or did it?
Yes. Originally, I was seeking him out because I saw something that he would like. And then when I went to his Facebook page, I saw that Peach had inquired months ago, like, "Hey, where are you?" And so I went looking, and I have a friend, August, who lives here in the Denver area, who also knew Beach personally and had been his friend for 10 years before YouTube, and was pretty much his best friend. And he was the one who tracked it all down. he knew Beach's stepfather by name and was able to call up there and find it all out, and was able to also talk to the officers that showed up. It was a non-emergent call. Um, he just passed in his sleep, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know.
Mm,
His last Facebook post was in July. His last tweet was in July.
right.
And in mid-July at some point, Peach had posted to him on Facebook, "Hey, dude, are you still alive?" To which he did not respond. We heard nothing about where he was, what he was doing, or anything until Michael sent us a message today.
Yeah.
Right. So Green Machine was just asking who's Beach, and Green Machine, you've been around for Jesus, at least 2010. So I'm surprised that you're not familiar, because Beach was pretty active, definitely in comments, anyways, if not actual. I mean, he did make videos back in the day, but I mostly remember Beach as a commenter, and a no holds barred kind of commenter. Beach never cared about who he pissed off, or and would stand his ground virtually no matter what. Um, and there's a certain level of respect that has to come along with that. Even if you think someone's wrong, you kind of have to admire someone who sticks to their what they think is their belief is right.
He's really smart. Whether you agreed with him or not, or whether you liked him in that particular moment or not, there's no denying. He was a very intelligent guy.
Yeah.
We had a lot of disagreements. We had a lot of agreements. I've known Beach since pretty much the beginning of my YouTube life, and yeah, like I was saying before we came on the air, my last exchange with him was telling him to go fuck off.
Yeah.
Which also we said before coming on that that's not unusual.
I know all of the dinner club regulars, Bionic Dance and Joe were not his favorites, and at his place all those years ago, I'm talking like 10 years ago, we were making those videos from the shrine to William Shatner at her, and that's all the way back then. And then the guy that was the barking atheist,
Sierra.
Sierra, but back then
Right.
made video with me where we did a bionic dance off, and the person who filmed it was Beach. We were at Whataburger, and so yeah.
Yeah, I always I think about the fact that you just mentioned, Raven, how smart Beach was, right? I mean, Beach followed me on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. One of the few people who followed me in all three places, and like I couldn't get away with basically the reason. One of the things I admired about Beach is like if I tried to be cryptic, he always knew what the fuck I was talking about. Always, like because he kind of got me, I think, in a way, which is a compliment, I think.
He never struck me as being a happy person.
I can't speak to that point. You know what I mean?
Well,
That's impression wise, I think I hear you. You always seem to have an axe to grind. So
Yeah.
he was like the lion with the thorn stuck in his paw at all times. Like he really
just
had
no one take the thorn out.
Yeah, something was egging him all the time. When I was with him in those weeks, I was filming a whole bunch of different YouTubers answering the same questions for a survey, and I matched up all their answers to one video, per question. And so we had gone to a mall to film Bruce, who is also known as the Stigma Dane to most of us, but Fallen Ashoba, and then Bruce's wife, now Sabella, was also part of my video. And it was during his wife's part where she wanted to go get filmed at the mall that I came face to face with Beach's agoraphobia problem. He had to, really work to be able to stay out in public in the mall. Um, he was having a little bit of a panic attack, and part of that was because he, like me, was a veteran, like Raven, and some of that followed him around for like
Right.
that's part of his edge was that he had some service time and it kind of did some stuff to him.
Right.
And
I did
it
not realize that he was a veteran, although I did know that he had a certain amount of either training or study in basic in intelligence matters. He knew an awful lot about the intelligence community. So I don't know what he might have done in the service if he was in signals or whatever.
well, by the time we all knew him, that had been a long time past. Uh, he was older than you by a pinch,
Sure.
and he had been going to the VA for his health care, just like me, and we talked about that a lot. But I remember after we went outside of the mall and he and I calmed down, we all went to uh, Chili's to have dinner with Bruce and Sabella, and even the Chili's was a little bit crowded. So I told him, "Why don't you go to my truck and then get one of my atheist stickers from the Evolve Fish store, and then sneak over to Bruce's car, and you can put one on the back of his car, just as a joke, right?"
That's vandalism as a joke, though. Yeah.
Yeah, vandalism as a joke, right? So he did. He felt great about doing it too. He put one of the Evolve Fish logos on the back of Bruce's car, and when we all left, we wanted to film it, like drive up behind and like film them driving away with like the atheist bumper sticker, and I think they thought we were following them,
Well,
and
you
they
were.
sped off. We didn't get the shot of what we wanted because they thought that we were like atheists coming to like track them all the way home or something, you know. So
Yeah.
they peeled out of the Chili's parking lot, and it wasn't because we wanted to like chase them home or anything. We just wanted to get the shot.
You're just scary atheists, man.
Yeah,
You heathens.
yeah.
Um,
I still have little stickers for to add feet to Jesus fish. To turn them into evolve fish. I
right.
still have those stickers in my truck.
All that keeps going through my head is, okay,
It
was the sticker put on the paint or was it put on the window?
was on the bumper side of the car. So
Okay.
it was more bumperish.
Yeah. You just mentioned something which I think might be a good place to step off from reminiscing about Beach and go into some current events. You mentioned about how you guys are both vets, and obviously Raven's a vet as well. And this week, Matt Getz said, "Why don't we abolish the VA?" I mean, they're coming out and saying all kinds of crazy ass shit. I know, but I mean, like, once it's out there, then it becomes part of the conversation. And then it becomes something that we have to apparently fight against, even though the VA should be as basic as first grade. You know what I mean?
That's why they
What's the
Well,
rationale behind it?
nothing.
I can tell you what it is. Obamacare is a step closer to universal health care, and the VA is VA universal health care. It's like a model for what
Right.
universal health care should look like for the rest of the country.
Kinda. I mean, the VA has a history of a lot of mismanagement. A lot. From what I understand, it's okay now. I don't use it. From what I understand, it's okay now, but it does have a history of being a money pit. And a lot of problems, a lot of mismanagement, a lot of shortages and things and stuff that are needed in places. I think a lot of that stuff has been ironed out. I think during the Obama years, they fixed a lot of that stuff. But still, there's a reputation that's there.
I
would
got
like
my
to
fourth
think
COVID
that-
shot, right? I
Mhm.
got my fourth COVID shot, and there was no wait, no line whatsoever because I was going to the VA, and they were set up with a whole shot clinic, and it's like they're oblivious to the fact that, like, because of intersectionality, a lot of veterans are conservative, and they're not showing up for the shot, so they are wasting money with like having nurses on hand ready to jab people, and then they have it on their website. We've expanded to cover all veterans' family members, and pretty much there's a clause for everyone. They just want anyone to go into that VA right now and get a shot because they got a whole bunch of shots and nobody's getting them. And that's
Right.
part of the whole money mismanagement. You know,
Right.
I hate to say it, but they overstocked for all the veterans. They're prepared for all the veterans are showing.
Yeah, the problem is that they're competing with like CVS and all that stuff. I mean, I got my fourth shot at CVS and I just walked in, I got the shot and I walked out. Like there was no wait, there was no nothing.
Sure.
I took selfies with the posters outside of the VA that are like an ad campaign for get the shot. They it's not just getting the shot. Now they have an ad campaign to try to get people. That costs money to come up with. You know, and not just like printing out the posters, but like the company they must have paid to come up with the posters.
Right. The ad agency or whatever. I wanted to make a point, bearing on what Raven said a moment ago about how the VA has a reputation of having been mismanaged off and on and being a bit of a money pit. First and most obvious point is almost any government spending is seen as a money pit because there is going to be inherent waste. Sometimes on purpose because they want to waste money because they know there's supposedly an inexhaustible source of money. The other thing is, that's cool. The other thing is, my experience in the UK suggests that when there's a governing party that disapproves of, in this case, the VA, they will try to starve it of funds so that it looks like it's being mismanaged. And then they have the excuse that, hey, we need to privatize this because it's not working well in the public sector. That's what goes on across the water. And so I'm always suspicious when they say it's a money pit or they say it's been badly run. My attitude is, okay, maybe it is being badly run. Is that on purpose? Are you doing that on purpose? Because don't put that past them.
Well, there's also the element of where sometimes people will waste money because they know that if they don't use that money, they won't get the same amount of money the next year.
Which pisses me off for this reason, right? And this is where my inner conservative starts to come out a little bit, because like if you have more money than you needed to spend in a particular year, you don't need to ask for the same amount next year because you still have the change left over from this fucking year. So it doesn't make sense to spend the change and then ask for more than you got last time if last time you already got more than you fucking needed.
Not necessarily though.
Well, I mean, keep the change then and put it in the bank and then ask for the same amount instead of more next time. Do you know what I mean? That way you've got a cushion in case you run out next time.
No, I get, but that's typically what happens is they allot X amount of dollars for this particular agency. If they don't use it that year, whatever isn't used goes back into the general fund, and then that agency gets cut short the amount of money they get for the following year. And
that's a bad way of running it, is what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. But like I was just going to say, like every one of us knows, is just because last year was great doesn't mean next year or this year is going to be the same.
Sure.
So,
If things were a little bit more flexible, we could cut some of the waste, but.
Well, I mean, I'm all for cutting waste when it comes to government spending, but you have to identify why it's being wasted and where and by whom. And before we start with any social programs, they should go through the fucking military budget, because I guarantee you there's millions, if not billions of dollars literally being wasted. We've all heard about the, $1,000 hammer and the fucking $600 screwdriver and all that kind of shit. And that stuff is real. They really overbill on purpose, mostly knowing, as we're finding out with Trump and his taxes, for example, they do this shit thinking nobody can go through all his line items and find out what we're actually charging for. They're going to look at the bottom line. That's all they're going to look at. They're not going to look at the little itemized things and say, hey, why are we spending $1,000 on this hammer, etc. You know?
It's a nice hammer.
Yeah, it better fucking be.
It's Thor's hammer.
But this is my point, though. So the people who are knowing that they're going to get a government contract are overcharging for shit on purpose because they just assume, rightly, apparently, that there's not going to be any major oversight or comeback, even if there is oversight.
Right.
And a couple of obvious points from the audience. First, from a friend, Vegas, and then from the Green Machine. It costs money to audit. That is true. That is true. And it also costs money to spend too much money on stupid shit. You know, is it cheaper to have an audit and save yourself millions and millions of dollars? Probably. Right. I don't really know. I mean, I know there's like the general accounting office. But to me, that's just a magnet for corruption. You know, I mean, maybe they're honest, right? But who knows? I don't really know. What are you working on there, Michael?
Oh, files. That's my life now. This is my office is still in shambles from when we redid the air conditioning. But every time I'm on the show now, it seems like I'm just moving paperwork around to kill two birds with one stone. I just have hands everywhere on this paperwork, and it saves me some time later. You know.
Cool. Kazuma, I'm catching up to you with my beard here.
Ah, yes. Looks good, man.
I could never grow one as long as you can grow one, and that's been scientifically proven already. Like back in 2014. You know, you had a beard that would rival Serge Tankian's. I mean, it was down here, you know?
Yeah.
So, Michael,
Yeah.
I will bring this up with you because, well, you're the researcher. So there's a couple of YouTubers I am wondering about.
Okay, go ahead.
One is one that we've discussed, Integral Math.
So,
has anyone figured out what happened to him? Integral Math.
Integral Math, right? Yeah.
Yes. So I did not find any response from him. I got responses from other people that used to know him, right? But it wouldn't be right of me to make any accusations. But he kind of disappeared around the same time that other people disappeared that were around him. And I think they all just decided to leave social media at the same time. But
is Integral Math the same person as Justicar?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Affirmative.
I tracked an account that was on before Truth Social. There was another one, Parlor.
Yeah.
There was a at Just a Car verified account on Parlor, and I tried sending messages to that because I just wanted any response, and wasn't getting any response from that either. But it had been somehow verified on Parlor, that account. So
what
How about
time
Gab?
did you say that him and the other group of people that you say is vanished at the same time? How long ago would that be? Round about January 6th, I'm wondering.
No.
Before that.
Yeah, before that.
Prior to that, by a couple months, but
Right.
In the run up to the election, actually,
Right.
around that time.
And another one I was wondering about, it's someone else that I think everyone in here knows. Not in My Name 2050, and his wife, Cinemonster.
I never knew his wife, but I haven't heard that name for such a long time. Not in My Name 2050. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
On Facebook, and he's like vanished off of Facebook. I can't even find his YouTube channel anymore.
Yeah. It is interesting when some people just decide to divorce themselves from social media, and I juggle with that question myself a lot. You know, I wonder, you know, how much am I contributing to the problem by being on Facebook, for example?
I mean, I've known a number of people who have gotten off the major social. They still get on the internet for other things, but they've gotten off the Facebook and Twitter, and their lives have actually gotten a lot. They've become happier people as a result. But I don't know if I can completely do that or not. So
it's ironic because I mean I really don't like Facebook very much, but it is a nexus of meeting place for me, for a connecting point I don't have for the people. That's where I connect with them. It's there or nowhere sort of thing. So it's kind of,
Auto. I'm sorry, Paul.
No, go ahead.
Justicar, I mean, Justicar was cruel. I mean, I have a hard time believing that he would be like, as an educated, out gay man, I am, playing for the wrong team here by being a conservative. I have a hard time believing he would come to that. I mean, who knows? I could be wrong. But I mean, he was just, the way he talked to people who were not on his side, he was just nasty. He was cruel. Even his friends were never spared. He was just he was an awful person. I mean,
I got the sharp end. I got along with what was Integral Math at the time, when I had my sort of YouTube honeymoon back in like 2009.
he knew how to be a very cruel bully. He really did. He was good at it.
In the early teens, and I made a few videos basically saying, hey, man, this anti-Islamic bigotry is really pissing me off, or words to that effect. And I mean, he just completely went in on me, man. I mean, he was like, told me multiple times that I was an idiot,
And then, of course, the way that the YouTube comment sections are now, you wouldn't even be able to have that interaction. Like 3/4 of the comments would have gotten auto deleted.
Right.
Really? I did not know that about YouTube.
Oh, it's so bad now. You have to be so careful of what you say. If you type anything more than a sentence long, I recommend copying it to Notepad first before you hit send, because it could disappear.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not a place for conversations anymore. If I see a little notification on my bell saying, there's someone's commented or whatever, if I get there more than, I guess YouTube sometimes deletes them before I even have a chance to see them, but the notification will still be there. You have a comment. Oh, look, great. Click it. No comment. So
how about all the comments you see where it'll say, 25 replies. So you click to see the replies and there's nothing. All of them hidden. All of them.
A lot. Yeah. It's really, really annoying. I mean, I
actually
one of the reasons I hardly spend any time on YouTube anymore is it's just not what the reasons I got into YouTube don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things is having discussions in the comment section. I'll make a video that gets people to think about things. It gets people to talk about things. We have conversations. It's great. And that has cut down to, I don't know, 1/4, maybe 1/5 of what it was before, because
it's all
people can't have the conversations. They get deleted, so no one wants to.
Now that you mention it, I mean, yeah, I think actually over the last couple of months, I have gotten notifications, a couple of them, because I don't really post much anymore. But I had gotten notifications that there was a comment, and then when I go look for it, there's no comment. So somebody just might have been telling me to go fuck myself. Just, that's the norm.
Yeah, I was turning this comment from the audience up on the screen for a second about what we were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah,
but not that one, the other one.
It's good though.
This one. Justicar once replied to me that people needed guns to defend themselves from the police. Said the same thing to me, and said specifically, cited historical examples of how people have fought the police off with their guns and gotten away with it and not gotten arrested for it. He had like a list of things. And that was before the thing that happened in Oregon back in 2015. Do you remember? I think it was 2015 or 16 when those that family, they took over a government building in Oregon and they had their guns, and there was like a standoff with feds for a month.
Mm-hmm.
Was that 2000? Or was that 2017? Was Trump in office yet?
No, that was before Trump. That was during.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 15 or 16, I think, when that happened. And there's a family. I can't remember their last name. It's really working my nerve up. Huh?
Isn't it Bundy?
That's it, the Bundy. Thank you. I knew it was something like that. I knew it reminded me of a serial killer.
Earl and Emil or something like that.
Yeah, right. And they took over some sort of like federally managed building. You know, it was just basically like a forestry building or something like that. And they decided that the government had illegally seized their land from them because they were grazing animals on government land or something like that. It was just big, you know, to do. But the bottom line is they got away with it because they had guns. And it really does make me wonder if Justicar might have had a point, even though I don't want to agree with the point. He might have had a point like this. The shooter in the Uvalde school shooting a month and a half ago, the cops stood outside because they knew he had an automatic weapon, right? And I'm kind of wondering if, because like you can have a toy pistol if you're fucking Tamir Rice and they're going to shoot you, right? But if you've got an AR-15, are they going to shoot you? I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse held his up in the air when there was riots going on in Kenosha, and the cops didn't take him down. And they, brandishing an automatic weapon. So maybe, I don't know.
It wasn't the gun; it was his color.
There's the argument to be made there. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the thing that's been put to the test. In an open carry state, they had the black guy walking with an AR-15 over his shoulder, and every cop in the town came out and they put him on the ground. They arrested him. I mean, I don't know what the hell they charged him with. It was open carry.
And then they tested it with someone white doing the same thing, and nothing happened.
And they let him go. So I mean, it's just so yeah. I mean,
it was that an experiment you're saying?
True.
Yes.
What was that?
That must have been one brave person to risk getting shot.
It's on YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was very brave.
But I mean, it's something that's been put to the test, and yeah. So I mean, I don't think it was a gun thing, and that's why they nothing happened. I think it's a color thing.
So yeah, I mean, people made that point at the time when the thing was happening in Oregon. They're like, if this was Islamic people taking over a government building, it wouldn't have lasted a whole day, much less a whole month.
Right? Well, why can't it be both though? It could be both.
White and Islamic. You mean? Yeah, that works.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the race and the type of gun. It's both. And yeah. So I'm just saying it doesn't have to be one or the other.
I've lost count of how many times white cops have shot black people for having a phone in their hand. Okay, so it doesn't even have to be a fucking gun if you're black. To be fair,
right.
So I mean that's just what I've observed. That's not my lived experience, of course, but it seems to happen an awful lot. Way too much. Should never happen. You should never get shot for holding a phone. And you should also never get shot without warning. Drop the gun or we'll shoot.
Right. Something. This isn't the outcome of a scientific study either. So that I guess we should point that out. But at the same time, do we need one?
Yeah.
The results are already pretty obvious. Do we need one? So yeah. I don't know.
Do we need to prove that the road is hard? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm going to put this comment up as well. If a SWAT unit shows up at your door, you need to shoot them. I tried to point out how that's a great way to get killed. You would have nothing to do with that. I think if you are surrounded by cops with guns, there's no good outcome. Shoot them, don't shoot them. It's not going to go well either way.
So, I mean, I was, I had to have been about 18, I guess. I was pulled over and I had a cop pull his gun out and point it right at my face. And I thought I was about to die because I had a hairbrush in my pocket and it was sticking out. And I more than once had wondered if I were black or Hispanic. Would I have survived that stop?
Right. And the fact that we can even wonder about it is testament to the level of the problem that we know exists. We don't necessarily have to have specific statistical numbers to know that a problem exists, And you just basically admitted that you probably were the beneficiary of privilege,
Yep.
Michael, you look like you had something you were about to say.
You did.
To the people in the chat.
What about
I
them?
was just reading.
All right.
Some seem to agree with Justicar on gun issues. I'll agree that Justicar was kind of razor tongued with people a lot, and that's part of our memory of Beach as
Beach
well.
as well.
And yeah, Beach and I were both part of a group called Hate Club. I left that, and then that morphed into Blue Chat, which was a different group that was also uh, just kind of beating up on people on the internet. And
I was in
Cable Hut followed.
I don't think it was the hate club chat. I think it was in one of the little satellite ones around it. That I was in for a very
Yeah.
short time. I just thought, this is stupid. This is just, I mean, people are just being shitty for the sake of being shitty. Yeah, that's, I mean, I've been shitty to people on the internet. I think anyone who knows me long enough online or knows about my history online can say that, yeah, I've been really shitty to people online.
It was kind of your thing for a little while.
Zoom can attest to that.
Sure, but it was kind of your thing for a while.
It was kind of my thing. It was never like a stupid shitty.
No, but it wasn't like poning or anything. But you were just really snide with people,
right? But it wasn't shitty just for the sake of being shitty. I mean, there was reasons for that were like disagreements or whatever,
sure.
and I was very effective at just tearing people apart.
One of my favorite videos from you back then, you'll remember this one for sure, is when that black football player kissed his boyfriend when he got drafted, and then that there was that veteran guy. Who was a black fellow talking about how he objected to having it on his TV, and you absolutely eviscerated him. It was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that was
I don't know if I saw that one because I went off on that guy too. So that's interesting.
I did like two or three videos to that guy, but that one in particular, that one was there was no quarter.
It was beautiful.
And that's the kind of thing I mean. Like I honestly, whether Kazoom agrees with it or not, or whether he looks back at some of the views he once held that I haven't heard him espouse in a while, if he still agrees with that kind of stuff, and I mean, but my venom towards Kazoom wasn't stupid. It was nasty, it was rough, but it was based on something real. The hate club stuff was just stupid. It was stupid. It was just like, hey, let's go after this person just because.
Right. That's kind of like bullying. That's gang. That's being a gang.
It's not just bullying. It was purely malicious. It was a bunch of assholes who, for the sake of, they understood. I opposed it from the start, and I said, being an asshole doesn't make you right, and people wanted to be an asshole, and they thought it made them right. It's just dumb. All these people going around saying they're skeptics, they're this, they're that. They were irrational, unreasonable, illogical jerks.
At the time, I had said that was gang mentality, and I was not into that whole thing. So
it also sounds like a mean version of Drunken Peasants. A mean version of that. I mean, they can be mean as it is, but just like imagine if they never were nice.
And it was groups.
They weren't nice anyway. So I would just say they were assholes. Pure. They still are assholes.
I don't know
We've
anything
got
about that anymore,
cyberbullying, but Paul mentioned ponage, and for me, the start of the cyberbullying was the Ponage Olympics.
Well, the Ponage Olympics, Ponage was already old by then, though. Don't you think so? I mean, like,
yes, I agree.
Yeah, it was. But the beginning of me
just poning Venomifying X alone took up an entire year of YouTube atheism.
Yeah.
Oh, it was dumb.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, low-hanging fruit for one thing, but
no, but it's not just low-hanging fruit. That was the desired effect. It was to stereotype a person, and the group mentality of it is so unethical, because if it took a group member that they liked and someone did that, they would totally oppose it if you stereotype someone away. So this idea of stereotyping to hate a person and have a mob mentality is sickening. It's okay. Everyone wants to get together and oppose someone if they're doing it, but it's okay if they do it. The hypocrisy is grotesque.
It's like lots of people would never stone someone, but if a whole group of people is stoning someone, they'll pick up a rock. You know what I mean?
One of the things that drove me crazy at the time was I had a friend, somebody that, again, I think most of us, we all know, who had passed away a number of years ago. He was involved in it, and I was always like, dude, what are you doing? This is like, this isn't you. But it was William Cardno. And it was just like, dude, this isn't who you are. Why are you such an asshole when you're with this group? But yeah, I mean, it overtook so much of the community for a while.
Well, and the Ponage Olympics, the point earlier, definitely made it, I guess, sort of brought in a level of playfulness to something which shouldn't be playful. I mean, I agree with Galen. There was an awful lot of basic gang mentality that was going on. And it worked both ways, though, as well. Galen, you just mentioned about how, if someone who was popular got dogpiled, there would be a counter response to that. And that basically happened to Coughlin back in the day. Love him or hate him. And he used that to his own advantage to grow his channel as well. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but that's true.
But it also got uglier because people were doing things to try to, like, not just stereotype somebody, say like Sean, but then people were going, there's a line you're not supposed to cross, even if you want to be critical. And then when people are crossing that line and then being dishonest about it. And so when people would do that to anyone, wait a minute, like, if you're going to do something, be honest about it. So you had people who were putting up drama and trying to stir up a mob mentality, but they were also being ridiculously, egregiously dishonest in how they were conducting themselves and making themselves look this way and making someone else even lying about what other people were. And so that I mean, it's one thing to have this mob mentality, but when you get into this disingenuousness, it was so prevalent. And then other people, you have to shift through the bullshit just to get back to the level. It was garbage.
It was a really low point in the Great Debate community history, was the hate club period.
I never was even aware of the hate club, so I guess I was just like super out,
So many people were involved in it. So many. It was a pretty big deal for a little while.
I mean, that was never the style of my channel, I suppose. So no one probably thought I should be invited, and I'm glad for that.
Yeah, I think I was considered to be a natural for it because I was such an asshole to people. But like I said, I mean, it was different. It was different. It was a whole different animal.
I would say that it was one permutation of something that still goes on to this day. And I don't want to pick fights from this channel with the people that are still doing it. But some of the targets that I see followed around would be listed under Kiwi Farms as lolcows. And all of the channels that make videos about them repeatedly, even if they don't make any new content, they just have to, rehash old content about them and just
people that go after Shani for Christ.
Yes, those people.
Who, I mean, I am on a channel. I'm a host of a show that does dedicate a lot of time, and I laugh and I sit there, but I don't really, because I mentioned it several times now over the last couple of weeks that it's mean spirited, but yeah,
she's the brunt of so much stuff on the internet. She is. I understand why she does stupid things, but still, she man.
Well, I had to talk about this with a friend. He participates somewhat in it with Mrs. Parker. I don't go and engage with any of that bullshit. But when I discussed it with him, we discussed people like G-Man and a bunch of others that they target. And, you know, the thing was that he was always this person, my friend Alan, he's always talking about how there has to be a line, how you have to conduct himself. And he does a very good job at that. But he, you know, really puts down that a lot of people do not. And I think that a lot of them, they want that attention. They just want the negative attention. It's like sometimes some people feel that any attention is good attention.
Right.
So it's a very unhealthy. And I looked at like Miss Parker's channel, not to rip Miss Parker, but it's okay to be critical and tell my observations. And that's like, why would a person spend all these hours every day, every week talking about Shani and G-Man all the time? Like, what are you doing with your life? I mean, I almost want to be like, do you want to fuck this person? Like, what do you want to do? I don't understand the mentality. I don't get it.
And the thing is, she's mentally she's kind of brilliant, and she's well spoken, but the focus is just weird to me. I don't understand why. I mean, expand out a little something, you know?
Dude, they sold 2 different houses for $1 each. And in 3 years, they blew through $750,000 on food. And her kids are taken away. I get why people go after her. What happens when I'm in a group where she comes up, like on with the other show that I'm on, when they bring her up, I'll if it's funny, I laugh. You know what I mean? If it's something where they're talking about something that's truthful or accurate, I'll get in there. But when they go after her weight, I always make a point to say, hey. You know, I mean, this is what we're going to go after. You're going to talk about her weight. I mean, some of my best friends are large people. I don't feel comfortable doing that. And then I'll get, you know, a response, something like, normally we wouldn't, but because of the things that she has done, who cares? Okay. All right.
I have a rule that I've almost never broken in 25 years on the internet, which is not to mention a woman's physicality to her or talk about it unless that's the topic of the video. You know, like if a woman makes a video about her physicality, I might then mention it, but only in that circumstance. I really don't like say, hey, you're looking great, or nothing like it at all. You know, I mean, I try really hard because I know it's got to be hard as hell for women to be on the internet at all. And yeah.
What drives me crazy is when not just Jenny, there's so many of them, where they are the target of certain things, and then they continue to do those things, and it's like I have a hard time feeling bad for you, if you keep asking for it. It's the only way I can think to say it.
Agent of Doubt had his hand up earlier.
Did you have your hand up earlier, Michael?
I was raising my hand as one of your overweight friends that you.
Okay.
Okay.
When you're not saying anything about people's weight. Yeah, that's me.
I wasn't going to say any names, Michael, and but.
Well, I'll add to another problem that I have that extends from the good argument Raven put forth, which I completely agree with, and how people will say, I'm for this, but. And it's like, wait, what? It's like there's a head scratcher, and they're like, hey, I'm totally in this, but, I'm also an egregious agitator of this. It's like, you don't have a problem with that? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, wow, you suck, But it's another thing I see people doing is, I've seen people state that someone, is not mentally fit, to a point of disability. And then they will then think, hey, I know this person cannot rationalize because they are cognitively have a disability, but I'm going to pick on them anyway because I find them irrational and they can't even reason. And they do that. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you have a better cognitive ability and you're ripping this person because they don't. So you can feel superior. It reminds me of the Sir Thomas Aquinas argument that to enjoy and get the understanding of heaven, you have to look down on people in hell and watch them suffer and be gratified by it. And I find that personally revolting, but I noticed that people who are these atheists do this on a regular basis.
Well, I mean, Deep Ashtray earlier had made the point, and I think Paul had it up on the screen about how way back in 2007, Deep Ashtray joined YouTube to be part of the atheist community and saw immediately how atheists will band together into tribes and do exactly what they claim to be opposed to. I mean, we've all seen that.
Well, and I think that was kind of like there was like an unspoken net that got cast around people who were in the atheist community, which I know I've mentioned this before, but to me it all started to come unravel with the double whammy of the she was asking for it thing at the beginning of 2010 when Thoughtful Atheist did a video about girls getting raped. Sometimes they're asking for it, and that caused a major rift in the community. And then right after that, Thunderfoot did South Park versus Islam, and that was it.
Yeah.
I think those are the two nails in the coffin that splintered the community from what it was. And in a way, I think kind of good, because again, this sort of mindless tribalism is not necessarily something we should shoot for, but it's also that there was atheism is a strange thing to have in common with people to create some kind of bond, because I'm a superstitious atheist, right? I'm not one of these sort of scientific atheists,
So there's a logic, like the atheism plus thing that sprouted up. Like,
yeah, that was like 2012. Yeah.
My opinion was it was terribly stupid. But I understand that there is certain thought processes that go on where if somebody says they're an atheist, you automatically assume certain things about them that may not be true. Like you're going to assume they're not going to have a lot of the biases that are created from religion against certain people. Like you're not going to be a homophobe. But that's not necessarily true. There are a lot of atheists that have been proven themselves to be perfectly capable of being horrible homophobic people. You assume that they're not going to be sexist because the religious stigma against women doesn't exist for them. But it does, because they grew up in a society that has it. So even though they don't believe in God, some of the biases that we correlate with religion, they also have. And that's why when Atheism Plus kind of popped up, a lot of people lost their shit and were like totally against it because, well, they're walking around with those biases with them. So,
yeah. What were you going to say, Galen?
A lot of people, they didn't want a discussion. They would limit this discussion regarding religion to something about faith and a deity, though that at the same time, there was no discussion of like philosophy of religion, any of the discussions that had long been going on that for centuries, which is just utterly ignorant and just dumb. I mean, it's just, it was an illiterate time by a lot of people. They go around being pompously saying they're open-minded while being as closed-minded absolutist people. And they were dogmatic. Like I would always point out, like, well, you rejected the deity, but you kept the dogmatism and you went double on it. Okay, I get that. I get it. I get you're a bigot. And they would be so offended, but I would be cutthroat with them. I mean, they did not like it, and I would also spice it. I was like, by the way, I'm not an atheist. And then they would be, oh, I mean, I even got into it with TJ on that. He got into it and he realized, because I got into it on air with him, and we had literally almost a fight over that. Like we got into it, like he was upset, and I was like, well, fuck you, like you don't like it. That's who I am. I'm not. And he was like, are you? And I'm like, oh, you're going to go with a false dichotomy. Now I'm a theist, and you're not going to differentiate. You don't even want to understand a person. You're just a moron. So,
well, I think an awful lot of people were aware of your long acquaintance with TJ and had assumed that you were an atheist. So I think maybe I'm curious, and you can answer this better than I can because you know TJ and I don't. But I mean, like, do you think he was worried about how it might make him look that he had a close friend who was, just not on board?
I'd have to think about that. I'm not sure.
Fair enough.
Sure. I'm not sure. He's a complicated person. Still is. Sure.
Well, I see that as a good thing.
Yeah, Galen, I assumed you were an atheist. You're a believer?
No, I have my own it's like it's a lot of. I have my own like set. I consider myself a fallibilist. I think we should look at epistemology. It's not just a false dichotomy of living it to two things of atheism versus theism. I mean, I personally look at it in a very different way of actions. I mean, I would say that people usually who are atheist and even theist sometimes are revolted by my views, but that's fine. I'm a big time person who's really into like Kierkegaard and Wittgenstein and many philosophers. Annie Besant though was way more ferocious than any modern day atheist, and I adore her. But it's just, I think there's a bigger discussion to be had, but most people are not into a bigger discussion. They're in a very limited discussion of any of this stuff. It's a very closed discussion.
There's so often people have only one way of looking at religion. They'll automatically, if you say it's a religion, it's automatically assumed to be an Abrahamic one, and then there's so many other concepts of a God that are possible. And
well, that's true. I mean, honestly, the reality is most likely if somebody says that they're religious, most likely it's one of the Abrahamic faiths. I mean,
true, that's true.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them, and they cover like most of the planet. So, I mean, yes, there are other options, but for us, in the Western world, that's most likely what we're going to run into.
Yeah, there are different religious languages, but just as many with people with political languages as well. But people don't. I know for Wittgensteinian looking at everything in language terms. So
yeah,
that's me.
I know one of the things way back in the day, and people are like, "Oh, you're always talking about Christianity. I think you never talk about Islam." And it's like, well, because it doesn't affect my life. If it did, I would, but it doesn't. So, and I don't know enough about it, to get into it. I mean, there's people like Aaron Ra that spend a lot of time looking into, all of the Abrahamic faiths. But I'm familiar with one. So that would be the one that I would talk about.
Yeah, I was always into everything with religion all the way back to elementary school. And my dad really pushed understanding differences in things. And then the portrayal of how people portray it in the media from his journalism, so I always had it a forefront. He was always giving me books on things like read this, and I'll read this opposing view. So I always had, I guess other kids didn't always have what I had, but I was able to have that, my privilege of getting that from my father.
Nice.
So what else?
So I don't want to say Raven was, I could have great conversations with Raven going way back, and then Raven could just be tough. But it was, I understood one thing about Raven is that Raven could say some ugly shit, and then it would be like the next thing it was like, hey, how are you doing? And it was like, and I really like I even to this day, I have some people that I know that if I bring up Raven, they're like, mother, like they hate your guts so bad, and they will tell me why, and they were like, how dare you speak of that person, even mention them. And I have always like said, no, this is what they do. I get pissed too sometimes. But then I'm like, wait a minute, it's just like I want to be more like Raven in that way, to not, because I can take things so personally too. And then I watch Raven and I'm like, okay, yeah, I need it like there are a lot of books that I read, like I told you of my dad. Like I would get a book like by, say, Martha Nussbaum, who is someone I personally just despise. And then I will get it, and now I'm like, I really like reading something that's different. But I also like to get things from different people's perspectives, what works for them. And so I did. I told Raven recently, I said, I learned a lot from you, and I did.
I don't know. I think I just, regarding that comment I just put up on the screen from Deep Ashtray, it's not as if I'm anti-religion as such. but especially right now in the current moment we're living in, I think it's perfectly fair to be bitching about religious infiltration into politics and elsewhere, you know. But and it shouldn't be limited to people who don't believe to make those objections. In fact, if I was a person of faith, I think I'd probably be arguing a little bit more strongly. Hey, this doesn't represent me.
So IRL, being involved in local politics, most of the people that I associate with in the political sphere are religious. And on the left side of the aisle, the vast majority of religious people that I have come across absolutely agree that religion should be left off the table when it comes to politics. It shouldn't be mentioned. It shouldn't be brought up. It just shouldn't be there. It doesn't belong in that realm. The people on the right side of the aisle in local politics that I know personally feel the exact opposite way, that they feel that their religious belief informs their world, and that their elected officials should agree with them on everything, especially from a religious point of view.
Which is hilarious because there's 30 something thousand different kinds of Christians, right? I mean, so like even if someone says, "Are you Christian?" and I go, "Yeah, I'm a Christian," it doesn't tell you very much. It tells you believe Jesus Christ died for your sins, and you might not even believe that much.
When I ran 2 years ago, when I ran for office, what they attacked me with, the right, they came after my non-belief. That was their main. It wasn't that the time that I was identifying as non-binary. They mentioned that in passing. It wasn't that I was not, straight. They mentioned that kind of in passing. No, they came after my belief.
The rise in Christian nationalism right now is alarming.
Yeah.
On the right, it's spreading like wildfire, and I don't know of good things to counter it. I don't know of good arguments to counter
what argument
what they're saying.
Hard to counter. Please enlighten me, because it should be pretty easy. What arguments are you getting that you're having a hard time coming back from?
Well, some of it has to do with how they are unable to handle multiculturalism. And to them, they think that we should have a one uniting culture, overarching culture, and everything then falls from that. But
because that's kind of like wishing for the tooth fairy to me. Do you know what I mean? I mean, honestly, you're never going to get a monoculture unless you're living with the same basic heritage and the same isolated geographical position without people coming and going. The American experiment, if you want to call it that, can never be totally homogenous. Can't be.
Never was from design.
Right. And it can't be. It's so from my point of view, Kazuma, if you're having trouble with those arguments, the first place would to be to point out the flaw in their presumption, i.e., what you say you want can't exist, and I mean, full stop. It literally can't be made to exist.
I mean, hey, anybody here been to Miami?
No.
Miami is the most diverse city in the country.
Wow.
You walk down the street in Miami, you hear like every language on earth. You smell every kind of food. You see people of every shade.
Right.
And I mean, Miami is more diverse than New York City. Miami is like crazy diverse. That's America. I mean, it always was.
Right.
I just see a lot of Christians right now terrified that their way of life is going to go by the wayside. It may not be a valid fear, but that is what they're worried about. And I don't know how to tell them that no, you're not going to lose your right to live your life according to your religion.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's not going to be that bad. But I don't know how to tell people that. I don't know what information to give them to show them that no, everything isn't going to be like what you see at a pride parade.
So in the early days of the good old US of A, the the United States government in the very early days was very anti-religion. And it wasn't just like, oh, we had the First Amendment and like that. It was like really like the churches were taxed back then, and that the federal government at that point they had no problem shutting churches down completely. Just get the fuck out. That's it. You're done. They had no problem with that. So like the way of life a lot of these people think they have isn't really something that is historically accurate. It's just what they have fooled themselves to believe. So maybe over the course of the last like 75 years or whatever, there has been a Christian movement in this country that got us to where we are. Okay. But that's not like a historical American thing that's always been there. So
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that. I mean, what makes Christians think that they have a right for their way of life to be dominant over everybody else's way of life? I mean, let's just take their argument on and say there's other ways of life. Surely those other ways of life in a free society, there should be room for everybody.
I want to point out to Kazoom. He's muted. I can see him talking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they'll try. Sorry about that. They'll probably try to say that statistically, the countries that are more homogenous in that regard have lower crime rates. They'll say stuff like that.
they also have stricter gun laws.
I want to point out to Kazoom that to consider looking at other arguments not from this time period, like Matilda Jocelyn Gage. She wrote Woman, Church, and the State. This was, 100, like 30, 40 years ago. So, go back to those arguments about religion in America and the history of it. There's a lot of good works that people have done historically in America. People seem to be only looking at things today. But there's a lot you could do. But you should also look at people like who took arguments about Christianity and religion and politics and just overall everything and about rights, like James Baldwin. You're talking about you're not going to lose your Christianity. Well, he would point out, he's like, are you Christian? Or are you doing it in name only? Or are you just a dogmatist? I mean, what do you have in common with your Christ? It's like, come on. Like he was very skeptical of Christians being Christian. It's just like, what does that even mean? Like I would pose it as a philosophical question back to them. What does it mean to you to be Christian? I mean, have them answer for it. If they want to be Christian, and then fine. Well, then what does it friggin' mean to you? Not this big conglomerate dogmatic idea that has to be like some theocracy. Then if they want to say it, then make them come out and say it, and then engage them on it.
I also think a lot of these people want to have their religion so front and center in the public sphere. Maybe their churches should go back to the old days and pay taxes like they used to.
Hey, how do you feel about CRB Vegas's last comment?
I'll put it up on the screen. Hang on. I subscribe to the idea that there does need to be some basic fundamental agreement of who we are, the kind of nationalism based upon we exist to promote an individual liberty and things like this. Well, I mean,
anybody disagrees. I'm sorry, Paul. I don't know if anybody disagrees with that. It's just I think that there are groups that are saying the we that they think we should agree with doesn't apply to all of us.
Right. And I'm thinking back to there's an old black and white film like that used to get shown in schools. It's like 15 minutes long, and it talks about this guy who I think is emigrated from Germany. He's talking to this other guy, and he's buying into what is some sort of American nationalist fervor. And this guy gives him a lecture and says, "Look, this is what we just got rid of, over there, and this is why we're here now. We're all Americans." And I think when a greater proportion of the people you were likely to meet in the street was also an immigrant just like you, this whole "we're all Americans" thing served everybody's purpose. But now there's like multiple generations of people who've been born here from immigrants who don't really consider themselves immigrants or even the children of immigrants anymore. This is their country as far as they're concerned. And with that in mind, they have a different attitude towards immigrants.
I've seen a number of people of Hispanic, Latino descent who have maybe they are here second or third generation, who say things like, don't let anybody over the borders, and can't handle all these immigrants and everything else. It's just like, seriously, you're just such a recent addition to the country as an individual, and you still feel that way.
Anybody of European descent is historically recent. I mean, I'm sorry, but even if you want to draw it back to 1619 or whatever, everybody who's more or less everybody who hasn't emigrated in the past 20 years is from someone who emigrated a long time ago, and we're all newcomers. The people we stole this land from are the only people who aren't. And by we, I mean the collective we. The modern society and everybody that contributes to it. We still benefit from that.
Also, and like Kazim's bringing up these people, I just keep thinking about what he said. It's like, oh, you're not going to lose this, and I'm like, and then Raven's talking about, oh, this old way of, like, what was it? What are these good old days? What, like when America was like this, a fully apartheid state? Like what are these good old days of America that a lot of people want to climb back to? They don't want to lose this or that. It's like, there's a thing in progress in human rights, and there's different problems today. Okay, there are a lot of problems today. I've stated, my opposition to ad nauseum, 100 times over. I'm not going to repeat those, but there's a lot of problems today, and there are a lot of problems back then. I don't see that America was glorified, but we should go back and look at the history of what this country is, and not just some kind of stereotyping ideal of it. I mean, they should too. Anyone should. I mean, we should educate ourselves. But I find, even though we read more online, we have our little phones and we look at everything, I find people more illiterate than ever. I mean,
well, but you have people like in positions of power promoting blatantly false narratives. Like last week, Rick DeSantis, DeSantis was basically saying that Thomas Jefferson and Washington were big abolitionists and didn't believe in slavery, and they were both slave owners.
It's worse than that. Like,
but I mean, what I'm saying is, just real quick. I mean, if someone in power is going to say that and they don't get properly called on it by the people they're saying it to, we're just sliding down a hill that we can't get back up because it's covered in grease.
I think it was it New Jersey
already?
I don't remember if it was in New Jersey or not. I don't know. It might have been, but there was like, you can only, if you were visiting New Jersey with your slaves, I think it was New Jersey. I could be wrong. You could only stay so long, because if they were here long enough, your slaves would become free. So let's say it was 6 months. So like after 5 months and like 15 days, he would send his slaves home and have fresh ones sent, so he could keep cycling his slaves so they would never be here long enough to become free. That's how fucked up George Washington was.
I just don't even know what to say about that, But they're trying to rewrite history right in front of our faces. They're removing loads of books from schools in Texas and in Florida right now. I can't remember which one of those states it was, but I heard they took 800 books out of schools that had previously been okay in schools. And when we start doing stuff like that, it's not the same as banning books, but it has the same effect as banning books.
Of course, that's what it is. I mean, you're taking books away. You don't want them to be read.
Right.
You're censoring, and I mean, but like a media today, you're talking about, what about calling people out? I mean, you just had Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand come on a UN speech saying we need to combat misinformation. I mean, even though she's a very sensationalistic speaker who speaks in terms of what many people would concern as propaganda. I mean, but that's what a lot of people do. Lots of politicians are ultra statist when you have either state media or what I call state compliant media. And so there's a problem with media today. There's a problem, against what yellow journalism is versus actual journalism. And then you have all these politically biased media that are sensationalistic, and that is a horrible problem. People favor those. It's just dumb. No one is clamoring for impartiality. They're clamoring for political tribal bias. It's just stupidity.
Well, that is a perfect jumping off point for another topic I wanted to bring up, especially with the fact that you're here with us, the group tonight, Galen, because over the past week, Katie Halper basically got fired for telling the truth. Katie Halper is a journalist who was working at the time, I believe, for The Hill.
Yes. The
Yeah.
Hill and that Rising. Yeah.
Yeah. And she had done a piece, and in her piece, she was supporting Rashida Tlaib, who recently called Israel an apartheid state. And then she took a bunch of shit about it, and she was called anti-Semitic and so on. And what Katie Halper did in her journalistic piece, which got her fired, was she systematically and documentarily showed, how it is accurate to refer to Israel as an apartheid state based on current working definitions of what apartheid is and comparing them to the actions of what's going on the ground. And I mean, I've already known that. I didn't need someone to spell it out for me, but the way she did it is pretty much irrefutable, in my opinion. What do you think, Galen?
Not only that, the piece was probably her best that she ever did on the Rising. I went through it. I had called my dad about it, even though he's, not well, but I still, he can talk and keep up in conversations at times. And he was just like, that's exemplary. I went over it with him, and he was like, this is fair. He's like harder than the worst professor on journalism, but her piece was not only that, it went back through the history with even people, and she's discussed this in interviews, and they've already gotten rid of a lot of people. They already pissed out Crystal Ball. They put out people like Ryan Grimm. Not that I'm super popular thinking well of them, but they're okay. But they got rid of a lot of different voices for the same kind of thing. I mean, this is something that happens. CNN has done it. If you speak on certain issues, and you wonder why people are still at these places, because it's stating you can't talk about certain subjects. You can't say this. You can't say that about religious theocracy, bigotry that is being put forth. I mean, she was censored for putting out a piece. They didn't even give her criticism. And then she's like, okay, you could put it out. This is what they did. They said, this is the kind of thing we would want to be put out in another way. And then they were like, okay, do you want me to put it out in the other way? And I'm like, no, you're fired. And no one's going to be putting anything out like this. So it was like, wait, what? And that's what happened.
I didn't know who Katie Halper was. I was unaware of this. And so I did a really quick Google search. So Katie Halper is a journalist, political commentator, and comedian who is Jewish, who got fired for making comments about Israel in agreement with a Muslim
Amnesty International and a whole bunch of other organizations.
But no, with the U.S. Congresswoman.
Right.
She was defending the words of Representative Tlaib.
Rashida Tlaib, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. That's right.
So, I mean, think about like the full thing here.
I'm gonna quote Roger Waters, of Pink Floyd, who basically said, telling the truth should be the basic standard for any journalist. And that's an unrefutably true statement. And the fact that telling the truth can get you fired tells you everything about what's wrong with corporate media right now.
Oh, it's egregious. And what Raven said is true. Katie Halper went further and has stated in interviews this week that she has this whole thing where she could have a right of return to go to Israel.
Right,
okay?
right.
But Rashida Tlaib, even having family links, is not permitted based on her ethnicity and religion. She's not. It's all about certain things. And here's the other thing: is Israel. There are other people who are Jewish, but they don't permit everyone because they want to look at your skin color. Okay, so it's very, very, very bigoted and racist.
Sorry, I thought someone else was going to speak, but yeah, I'll jump in there. The thing is, what's happening in journalism right now? This is obviously the most obvious recent thing that's happened. But what you were saying a moment ago, Galen, about how they basically have scripts that they can't vary too far away from. Like I was one of those people who got momentarily excited when Mehdi Hassan joined MSNBC, because Mehdi Hassan before MSNBC was probably the most effective interviewer I can think of, certainly for quite a long time. He held people's feet to the fire, and he still does better than anybody else on that channel in that regard. but he's definitely had to tone down an awful lot of the things he's normally used to talk about because he's on Team MSNBC.
Yeah, there are a lot of people. You wonder what they're doing when because they will play by those rules, and I really just like, okay, if you're going to play by those rules, then I'm really not going to qualify you as just a straight journalist. Like, there are a lot of people do that. I mean, I just don't respect it. I don't respect the people on Fox and anyone at Fox. I don't respect people at CNBC, MSNBC, NBC. I just find it's just trash, tabloid, sensationalistic garbage. I mean, there's so many things that are wrong. Like, I know stories on local levels. Like, I know with the local Times-Picayune or even some national corporate publications, where if I pay a person $50 to $100, I could get a story put out there. I know how it works. I know the system in even corporate media. I know how, if you get a person who has money and you could get them to spout for you, you could get a story done. Even if it goes against the grain, it's about politics and power and money. And it's really trash.
I don't remember if it was on my show or if it was the last time that we had a show here. But I mentioned that when Biden was in New York City recently and was at the UN and he was speaking and he had said that it's unacceptable for a country to seize land from another country and to hold it. That's unacceptable.
The Israeli delegation walked out.
The Israeli delegation walked out. And it was just like, okay, I understand. My understanding is he was talking about Russia.
Right.
For Israel to get upset about that, being that the U.S. is, I don't care.
Well, is it not like, it's not even tacit admission. It's blatantly saying on the UN stage, we know we're doing that.
We know we're doing that, and to be upset about that when the leader of the country, like, we're their greatest ally, aren't we? They exist because we financially support them.
I'm not so sure that's true, but I mean, they depend on our money, but I'm not sure that their existence depends on it. Their universal health care depends on it.
A lot of things depend enough on it. There's a lot of dependency. There's a codependency there. That's for certain. I call it, there have been disagreements, but I call it at least a somewhat of a vassal state, because the U.S. uses their military in conjunction with them to do what they want and to get away with certain things. I mean, that's just how it works. You don't want to have to put absolute qualifiers on that, but that's partially how it works. I mean, there's a lot of problems there, and the thing is, like, this whole thing with apartheid, like, this was a problem with South Africa, that people didn't want to be called out for calling it apartheid. There was a resistance then. There were people who don't even want to consider that America has been as egregious as any apartheid state in its history. Okay. And they don't want to talk about that. Even in history, you don't hear people talking about America has been one of the worst, most egregious apartheid states ever. No one, people, it's not even part of our lingo. It's disgusting. Like, Jim Crowism is disgusting. It's awful. It's not just the period of slavery. It's what happened after.
Sure. It's
awful. And we don't look at our policies now. We don't look at our policies and foreign policies. I mean, it's this gross, again, Western exceptionalist bias is atrocious. It's just disgusting. And people, but I mentioned this to someone yesterday, that when we talk about subjects, it's like, and you've heard me, I don't mean to repeat things, but we don't look at our own biases. We have to understand, we talked about atheism and religion. We exist in cultures with various different political and religious languages and group languages that we participate in, even if we're not in those groups, and this type of social behavior. And we have to take responsibility and be very critically aware of how we speak and how we act. And people do not want to consider themselves bigot. They don't want the idea of thinking they are, not looking at what we are, but they want to think of how everyone wants to paint themselves as the hero and someone else as the villain. I mean, and the thing is, everyone's, someone else's hero is another person's villain and vice versa. We don't really think very well socially.
Right. We talked about this a bit last week about how there's a sort of Christian compulsion in America to support Israel, the state of Israel, right? And they use that to their own advantage, and because they know what the dogma is over here about that, and they work it. But the larger point I wanted to make is about apartheid itself. You know, there's this big push inside and outside of the Middle East to not allow that word to be part of the discourse, and that's why Katie Halper got fired. And it's why Rashida Tlaib took so much crap. But I mean, without going through Katie Halper's point by point meticulous explanation of why it's apartheid, just the nuts and bolts of it is in Gaza, people can't even come and go. That's like a crime against humanity, right? That's actually a war crime. You're supposed to let people come and go, but you can't come and go. There's the West Bank, where there's loads and loads of Israeli settlements increasing every year and has been doing for 30 plus years. And there's different sets of rules for the Israeli citizens versus the Palestinian residents of the West Bank. And if you have two different sets of rules for people in the same area, that's apartheid. Especially, and then, okay, well, who's enforcing those two set of rules? Is it the Palestinians? No, it's the Israeli government. So the Israeli government is enforcing apartheid policies. Whether Israel, people will argue Israel's not apartheid. Well, Israel, that's very convenient because the West Bank is not supposedly part of Israel, even though they functionally are treating it as such. You know, so they're talking about Israel proper when the problems are really more to the points of the occupied territories or the controlled territories. What were you going to say, Galen? I thought you were waiting to speak.
Well, it's there. You're talking about also, let's just get some other big words out of the way: ethnic cleansing and genocide. I mean, if you look at the language over there, it's atrocious. There's a lot of, it's atrocious. Like, I have friends who have gone to Israel. I have friends who have arranged marriages, and we talk about it. I mean, we have to have, I push those conversations with my friends. I'll go to a family friend, and they're all like, they have arranged marriages. They've been to Israel. They're as Orthodox as possible, you know, and conservative. I mean, hardcore. But then, like, they understand the issues. They don't want the bigotry. But then I ask a question, and it's like, okay, what would happen if you knew someone who would even come along who was Jewish, but they're like black, okay, and or they're this or that, and then they were like, oh no, that wouldn't be acceptable. And I'm like, but you're saying you're not racist? Like, what? Where do you have to go to accept? Like, a lot of people do not want to accept they're bigoted. I think we all can be bigoted at times, and I don't think people just want to take responsibility. I think people are cowards. I think there's a problem in human nature with accepting our own bigotry and all painting ourselves as like heroic or victims, but never guilty. I think there's a problem with that.
Oh, you looked like you were trying to speak there, Raven. Sorry. Well, I'd agree. There's a problem with that, and I'm guilty of that myself sometimes. You know, I can be self-righteous. It's true. So, you know, and I think everybody has a streak of that sometimes. But, you know, I mean, we wouldn't have opinions if we didn't think they were right, you know. So but I want to say something else about what Katie Halper mentioned. You know, she mentioned that at the end of her piece that the two-state solution is off the table. And that's not an official position, but that is the de facto truth about what's been. They don't even talk about it. I can't remember the last time an Israeli official talked about, in a positive sense anyway, about the two-state solution as being something that they're negotiating toward. And I think that's because they've overpopulated with settlements now, the West Bank, to the point where if there was a two-state solution, they would worry about, you know, the Israeli inhabitants, what would be their fate.
There's also a problem with, you know, if you're over there with those people living in those conditions that are like, are literally concentration camps in Gaza, where they don't even have running water and they get cut off so many days a week because they're not even considered full human beings. I mean, it's atrocious bigotry. There's just so many problems. I mean, with this whole situation but again, to go back to the whole Katie Halper problem, you can't, it's literally, people don't want to call apartheid. I mean, when are we going to call bigotry bigotry? I mean, we can't even, they're trying to stop it being even said that it's bigotry, and then they'll question it. Like, well, then let's talk about it. But they don't want, they're silencing the story, so it will not even, they don't want a conversation about it. And there's so many people in media who will not talk about it. Like, why isn't this story over all through mainstream media? There's a problem that she's the only one doing it, and then she gets fired.
When I was growing up, stories about what was going on in the Eastern Mediterranean were on the news every freaking night, whether it was Lebanon or Israel or Syria or whatever. You know what I mean? It was. That's how I became interested in this part of the world in the first place. Was it's been in the news my whole life, and situation has obviously changed an awful lot since 1967. But the zeitgeist in terms of the conversation and negotiations and whatever, like I say, two-state solutions off the table. And the problem is that leaves a one-state solution, but they can't have that, because if they have a one-state solution, then there's no longer a Jewish majority, and therefore they might not have their constitutional Jewish government, and they're worried about that, what that would mean. So either you have democracy without the theocracy, or maybe theocracy is the wrong word for it, but however you want to enshrine the religion into the Constitution.
They don't want equal due process under the law, period. They want, it's more of a theocracy. That's what they want. And then they go around flag waving they're for equality and they're a democracy, when they're absolutely, utterly not. That is just a false narrative. And by the way, I would just want to shout out,
if you can't be an Arab citizen of Israel and have any potential at getting into the government, then you're right. It's not a democracy by what we would normally understand as a democracy.
No, it's not. It's completely unfair. There's one group oppressing another. I mean, you don't have rights. You're pressured in every way you are. I mean, go back to Jim Crow. I mean, who's going to defend that people in Jim Crow had fair access? There's still problems with fair access in America all over the place. There are problems with America in so many regards, but it's always been historically true. There are problems, but going back to the issue with Israel, I mean, you said since the 60s, one of the best thinkers on the issue is Edward Said. So if anybody wants to read up on him, he was an exemplary thinker on the issue with Israel and Palestine. So I just wanted to put that forward.
Yeah, I would add to that. So as I see it, and this is just pure speculation, I grant you all that, and I'd love to hear your opinions about it, because if a two-state solution is off the table and a one-state solution can't be made to function in Israel's favor, it seems to me that there is a policy of deliberate slow genocide, which Galen mentioned the word before. And, I think there's a fear of using that word, because you think of genocide as being something that happens all at once and all of a sudden. But if
it's slow, you're right. I agree with you. I believe there is a genocide. There's a genocide in Yemen. There's a genocide there. There are many genocides. There's ethnic cleansing, and there's lots of problems with apartheid and segregation in different parts of the world, and people don't examine it because it's a bad word.
I spoke to a Zionist person on Twitter some months ago now, and to my great surprise, we actually had a decent conversation, because they gave me direct answers to my questions, which instead of being evasive, which is mostly what you get on Twitter. And I said, okay, so let's pretend it's up to you. What would a solution look like? And they basically said that everybody who didn't want to stay in the West Bank could have to move to Jordan, and Gaza could become part of Egypt. In other words, get out and leave us alone. And I said, well, that's obviously not a solution that benefits anybody but Israel, and therefore it's not a solution.
Well, I had a friend, and I had a friend. This discussion ended it, and we talked about, she's in Israel, and we talked about Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, all kinds of literature, and even talked about To Kill a Mockingbird and everything. And then we started talking about Israel. And I was like, we went to the same discussion you just had. And I said, well, where do you want to see this go? And she's just like, well, they need to be eliminated. eliminate. Like it's like it's not genocide when it's them. It's just like it was like there was this rule. She's like, it's okay to eliminate them. It's just like you kill one of their children. It's not a big deal. They're just cockroaches. That's
Sandmen terminate runners.
Yeah, just kill them. And she even said she has, like, with people in her family, have killed other people's children. And I was like, what? That was the end of our relationship. Like, I tried to talk to her about it. Right. She was closed-minded. She was literally, for genocide. And she's like, well, it's okay. It's not like it's bad genocide. And I was like, what? What are we talking about?
Right. I just want to bring up this comment real quick. Because if you said this in the modern mainstream media, you would get the sack. Most definitely deliberate slow genocide. They're doing what the Nazis did to them, but they're doing it slow to see if they can get away with it. I mean, if it takes 200 years, that's what they'll do. And I think that's kind of like self-evidently the policy, but I think it won't take 200 years. It's already been, 55 years since the 6-Day War? And when the 6-Day War happened, and I'm not as educated on it as I might like to be, but when the 6-Day War happened, maybe there was an argument for holding those territories militarily for some period of time because there was an unstable situation. That's no longer and has not been the case for such a long time. And as far as I can tell, as a bystander, there just hasn't really been genuine good faith negotiations like we talked about last time since Rabin was killed, So, and therefore, where do we go? What happens? I have no reason to really care about this issue other than basic humanity. You know what I mean? I hate to see people being oppressed and killed for no reason. It's like one of my things. I don't like it.
Well, I think we should oppose, crimes against humanity anywhere, whether they're in America or elsewhere. It's like, I'm a part of this world. I am the world and the world is me. And you are the world. Like Raven is the world and the world is me. I mean, we're a part of this. We coexist in this world. What happens, like I hear a person, any of us in here express something that happens to them, that's goes back to the civil rights era. It's like that happens to all of us. If you don't have that kind of empathy, then what are you doing? There's something wrong. That's how I view it.
I'll be right back. I got to do something real quick. Keep on talking.
Okay, I got it. Well, Kazoom, you've been quiet. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
My mind just keeps going back to the whole when you mentioned Western exceptionalism, and it was going through my head is just like, well, are there? And when I asked in the chat too, I said, I understand the examples of Western exceptionalism that are bad, but is it necessarily bad to think that your own culture is better than others? Is that automatically bad? I mean, if you treat other cultures as if they're terrible, that's one thing. But if you treat other cultures, I don't know. I mean, where is the line on that? When does the notion of Western exceptionalism become bad? Where is this line? It's kind of weird.
I can handle that. I would say it's okay to be critical and to understand other cultures, including our own, but to look at our own with bias and to look at others with bias is literally a cultural bias fallacy. So we want to be logical about this and fair. So that's not exempting criticism. It's one thing to be critical. It's another to be classifying groups of people and humans in a bigoted way and there's so many problems with this type of thinking. I mean, it's illogical to how we group and classify, and tribal thought is extremely problematic. We're not thinking as individuals. Are we even thinking? So there's a lot of problems with that. There's so much there. And then there's so much bias when we think as a group, my group versus your group. I mean, it's dumb. It's just dumb. It's dumb, and it's so there's a lot of obedience in it too. I hope that's fair. It helps, And by the way, I also I'm following you. I gave in. It's horrible. I hope Raven shakes her head at me. I gave in and I got on TikTok. I'm not posting anything, but I'm following you on TikTok. So just wanted to put that in. I'm atrocious. I'm looking at TikTok. It's just awful. I'm
TikTok is
gave into TikTok. I don't know if Raven's on TikTok, so maybe I spoke too soon. But I know that Kazoom is thriving on TikTok. So
I'm doing all right on it. I haven't posted that much on there, but
I have an account there, and I've never posted anything. I'm not that interesting.
you aren't that interesting. You've always been interesting. You've always had a flair for having something to say. Kazoom too.
Not on TikTok.
Oh, there he is.
hey, good to see you.
Hey, Joe, what do you know?
How's it going, everybody?
Hello.
Have you just got back from a vaudeville show?
I got to go back from Chicago. Well, I'm actually not back. I'm partway back, but I'm not all the way back. I am in Dubois, Pennsylvania, so about 4 hours from home still.
I'm sorry.
Stopping here for the night. Coming back from the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference, and I made a good time a long way, but I'm fucking tired. But I wanted to pop in and say hello, at least for a little bit anyway.
Hello and cheers. And by the way, I'm saying cheers because I went and bought this. I got a peace tea because I'm invited by Paul of all people. So I had to get a peace tea. I've already been through one, and this one is Peach Love Pride. So cheers.
Cool.
When I had my deli, I sold tons and tons of peace tea.
I don't know that I've ever. I'm sure I have, but I don't remember what peace tea looks like.
So, Joe, have you been following the show at all, or did you just turn it on and to see what's happening?
I was I was a little out of sorts, and so I was on with my on Skype with my friend Tony and my friend Keith. So they were lifting my spirits, but I'm doing okay now.
Well, good. I hesitate to tell you what we were talking about then, since you're doing so well. No, we were just talking. We started off talking about how Katie Halper got fired for telling the truth.
I don't know who that is.
Defending Rashida Tlaib, huh?
I don't know who either of those people are.
Rashida Tlaib is a congressperson, and she's the only Palestinian American person in Congress, and she's one of the squad, yeah. And Katie Halper is a Jewish journalist. I guess Raven said former comedian. I wasn't aware of that. But she got sacked on the Hill for basically saying that Israel was an apartheid state and agreeing with Rashida Tlaib, who had already said that. And Rashida Tlaib took a lot of abuse in the press for being anti-Semitic and whatever, for calling Israel an apartheid state. And what Katie Halper did was systematically and methodically using documentation about what the definitions of apartheid are, and et cetera. And it just basically is undeniably so.
It is. I mean, the fact that like the Druze Christians don't have full rights, as and
Sure.
the Muslims don't have full rights. So yeah, of course it is. I mean, I guess they didn't like it because obviously, if she's Jewish, of course, that takes away. They can't call her anti-Semitic, right?
Well, they did, and they went after her as a self-hating Jew and did every nasty thing in the book, which is typical with awful places like the Anti-Defamation League and others. I mean, they go around bullying and screwing with people, making false accusations, which another problem with that is when you make these false accusations, it degrades, like when people make false accusations just to play politics. There are real instances of anti-Semitism. There's real bigotry that are atrocious. And you're degrading by just going around calling everyone this, and that, who you have a dissenting. So you're ripping dissenters and not differentiating on purpose.
Right.
I mean, there's a double wrong, a triple wrong here.
Well, that's right, because then you're killing your own credibility. And then when you talk about a real case of bigotry, people aren't necessarily going to believe you because you cried wolf all those other times when it wasn't real.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one thing, and it burns my ass because especially again, someone who is I've got Ashkenazi, I've got Jewish ancestors. I can disagree with the government of Israel, and that has nothing to do with my opinion of Jews.
Sure. And
Well
that should be
said.
basic, right? But that's not the common understanding.
Yeah, it's really horrible. In fact, I remember once, actually, my friend Tony that I was just talking with, I remember once getting in an argument with him because I was, and even just I was really disagreeing with the policy of the Likud party specifically. And he thought I was like attacking Israel. I'm like, no, I'm attacking the current administration, which is separate still from the country of Israel. And like, if you can't criticize your friends when you think they're doing something wrong, are they really your friend?
Right.
Because I said to him, my example was, I said, Tony, if I told you I want to lose weight, and I said, Tony, I want to lose weight. Here's my solution for losing weight. Tony, I didn't lose weight. Here's my new solution for you losing weight. And I just keep doing this. I hope at some point you'd say, Joe, I get that you want to lose weight and that's a laudable goal, but smacking yourself in the head is probably not going to achieve your goal. So maybe you should consider a different method, right? That's what a friend does. But some people are even taking that, like the whole thing of knocking down the houses of families of suicide bombers, like terrorists. Like, how does that? The terrorist is dead. You have no one to punish, so you're just going to punish their family,
Right, which is illegal. Yeah.
But also they go around again abusing who's a terrorist. It's like, like when there was a journalist recently who was assassinated in Israel. And I know Paul knows all about that, but I called it straight up. It was like her assassination was a terrorist action. I called it that, and I said then they went after her funeral and literally beat her coffin,
Jeez.
and then they went and took video of it and tried to insert things and manipulate the video to try to say that someone was throwing rocks, so then they had to go beat the coffin. So they were literally attacking and shooting people at the funeral, okay? And this was another form of terrorism. It's another part of genocide and ethnic cleansing to terrorize a whole people into submission, where you can't even lay someone to rest. And then there was another murder of a journalist. They did the same thing and attacked and shot people, and people were murdered at the funeral.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me. What you were saying a moment ago about how, using the term anti-Semitism inappropriately damages the cause. I just want to underline that a bit, because here's the problem I've had with that. When I've had disagreements with policies of the government of Israel and or the treatment of Palestinians, and sometimes I come across a Jewish person who accuses me of anti-Semitism. And I'll say, that's not anti-Semitic. I'm criticizing a policy. I'm not criticizing Jews or the people or the religion or anything like that. And they say to me, I'm Jewish. Don't tell me what anti-Semitism is. I know it and you don't. And I've heard people say the same thing about whatever other minority groups they are a member of.
Then they can fucking say it and explain it reasonably.
Huh?
They can say it reasonably. Get them to say it. Say, okay, then explain it to me rationally. Don't treat me like I'm another person who's inferior to you. If you're going to do that, then you are a bigot. Like, explain it to me like a rational human being.
And that's a good point, because certainly there can be cases where we can be unaware of our biases.
Sure.
But on the flip side, right? But we should be able to, if we detect that, we should be able to articulate what the person's doing. And if we can't, then we're probably full of shit.
That makes sense.
But you're right, and again, that is one of those weapons, and that's what I was trying to explain to Brian that one night. We kind of had a little bit of heated discussion, because I was like, you can, we all have unconscious biases. We can all be unaware of that we're causing harm, even if we don't think we are. But yeah, but there are people who will use that as a cudgel when it's not appropriate, and that it is hard to fight against. It's very hard to fight against. A lot of times what I'll do, if somebody comes at me like that, I just ignore them, because I'm basically like, you know what, that person is not an honest interlocutor. It's fine. It's like Galen said, to challenge them, but if they come back with bullshit, then just I just ignore them because basically, like, it doesn't matter what I say, they're not going to be, intellectually honest about it. So if they're going to be, if they're going to do that, then I can't waste my energy worrying about what they call me or what they say about me.
I want to add something with what Joe's talking about. Thank you, Joe, for those insights. But I want to also add that you've talked about, even between you and me, we've had, where things get emotionally charged, you should cool off too, but you need to be willing to engage in real conversation. And when we do that and we get upset, we also have to come back because we can get upset too. We can't just make ourselves I'm always right mentality, which is so obnoxious and arrogant. I mean, we have to be able to listen and say, question whether, am I wrong? And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't say, am I wrong? And I think that is one of the first things you got to do. You have to be like, are we having a learning oriented conversation or not? I mean, we could all get passionate, but can we see beyond our passions? I mean, come on. Can we be real with ourselves and not just others?
Yeah. Well, that's why I always say skepticism begins at home. If you can't be skeptical about your own thoughts and beliefs, then you can't possibly be a skeptic.
I think it's funny though. I just had me thinking about how if someone is too willing to question their own thoughts and their own beliefs, like publicly in a conversation or something like that, it's automatically seen as disingenuous.
See, that's weird though. I mean, now granted, the only time I could see it as disingenuous, there are some people in a very tedious way. They love to play devil's advocate always, and that can be a bit tedious. But I mean, I think though, if someone's willing to question themselves publicly, I'm willing to give them, the benefit of the doubt. Like, yeah, as long as I follow the discussion, I see that they're actually doing it honestly and not doing it as a front to cover things. But at least they opened the door for me to.
So what you're saying is, as long as they're not trying to cover up bigotry by pretending to be open-minded and considerate, you're
Right.
open to the fact that they might, go back and forth.
Exactly. Because that's the thing. Because there are such things. We've heard the expression "jacking off." You get people that, I'm just asking questions, but they're not honest questions. They're just
Right.
a lot of homophobes and transphobes will do the just asking questions thing when they're not really asking a question.
Sea lioning.
Was that
Sea lioning.
Yes. Right. So you put up the pretense that you're being interrogative when you're actually making declarative statements disguised as questions.
Right. And a lot of people do other things, like they'll take a middle of the road fallacy and they jump around with moving goalposts on these type of positions because a lot of people don't want to lock down and looking. But we should also, to have a good, honest dialogue, we also have to start, again, like you said, skepticism starts at home. We have to start with the genuineness and critical observations of ourselves if we want others to. We have to start with it in our own communication. If I can extend that to you, Joe, then you do it to me, then we can have that dialogue. We can have that conversation. I mean, from the moment I met Raven years ago, which is just like forever ago, like Raven always, sorry, Raven, I got to bring you up. You've always expressed like this existential pain of things you've gone through. You were always expressing yourself, and there was a bit of a chip on your shoulder, but I always liked that you could express it. We all need, like Joe is right up front. I'm a very upfront person. I think everyone in here is always going to state what they say, what they feel and think. I mean, sometimes we come off, sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, but I believe everyone in here is genuine. And if we get called out, we can accept criticism and take responsibility. But a lot of people do not do it, and we all can do better too. I mean, I know I can.
Well, yeah, of course, but I think that's the key thing. Is really trying to that's usually in the discussion. I try to ascertain as quickly as I can, is this other person genuine? Because the other thing I hate, there's probably the worst people to have a discussion with are contrarians, because if you can find it, like you can get a contrarian to literally work them around to take up your original position.
Right.
And then you realize, oh, this person is literally just going to gainsay no matter what I say because they think they're being clever, they think they're being intelligent, and they're not. It's because it's one thing. It's one thing to say, like, hey, look, I'm going to play devil's advocate. You're going to try to be skeptical. I'm going to be skeptical of what I said, what you said. That's fair. But the contrarians are not like that. Contrarians are surreptitious about it, and they're tedious, and I can't stand them. They're the only thing worse than contrarians are hard solipsists. They drive me nuts.
Ouch! I feel that. I hurt.
I personally don't like it when I try to get into conversations, and like anybody knows me knows that I could come out with a thesis when you push me on a subject. Like I can really go there. I will go deep. I'll be self-critical. I mean, I'll lay my heart on the line. I'll bleed for the issue, but I will be very critical of myself too. But I don't like being dismissed as I have some people who put forth, it's like, oh, Galen, you're just a contrarian. I mean, I want to tell you, I have a seething hatred if someone calls me that. Like, I mean, I can look at a Rashomon effect. A Rashomon effect is to circle the different perspectives to look at it. I think that is a logical way. It's an empathetic way of looking at it. I want to go through every one.
But that's skeptical, not contrarian.
Right. But a lot of people will frame it that way because it's a way of dismissing. I mean, I might have a different perspective, and someone will be like, oh, you're just like a contrarian. You're a fucking cynic. Like, you just have a bad attitude. And I'm like, just because
it's an excuse to not listen to what you're saying.
Right. And they just put it off that you have a bad attitude because you disagree. And I'm like, wait, it's bad because I have a different perspective? I'm now just like it's another way of passive aggressively telling me to go fuck myself.
Right.
Well, see, that's one thing. One advantage I have going for me. Not everybody likes it, but I'm never passive aggressive. I'm just aggressive. Nothing passive about me.
Oh, Joe, it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, like, and I say that with love because I mean, like, I would hazard a guess that out of all the shouting matches that have happened since we've been doing these jamborees, you've been involved in almost all of them. Because you're a very passionate person, you know what I mean? And I love that about you. That's not a criticism, but I'm just saying, it's an interesting thing because not everybody, I don't know. I'm happy to have debates, but at some point, probably to my own disadvantage, I'll back off if it gets too hot. Because I'm not a fan of huge confrontations unless I have no personal stake. I mean, if I'm arguing with a stranger, that's completely different because I have nothing to lose with a stranger.
Right.
But if I'm arguing with anybody on the screen, for example, I'm gonna allow for the possibility that maybe the person I'm arguing with, no matter how much I think I'm right, might have something I need to think about. Because if you have people in your life that you care about and or respect, it's important to take what they say and consider it. Otherwise, you shouldn't care or respect them.
Right. See, the thing is, I guess for me, like somebody who, if it's somebody I don't know, I don't care enough to I'll get to a certain point of anger and I'll just block them because I don't care about them enough to argue with them. So for me,
and since we've met each other, that certain point is we're going. It's a very quick journey now, isn't it, Joe?
I think Joe has blocked me twice.
I think you blocked me twice as well, Galen, back in the day on Twitter.
Yes, I have.
Joe has blocked me more than twice.
Wow, Joe has ferocious. Like I got really, there was this one issue that I got on with Paul where I think we spoke past one another, and I really do, but I got really heated over it. Like I was pissed off because it was like, why do we keep butting heads on this issue? And then you dug in and I dug in and I was just like, where am I supposed to go? I felt like I didn't know what to do. So I just said, fuck this. And then I came back around. I cooled off. Was like, I miss Paul. I don't like, this is stupid.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it too, sometimes for me, it's like blocking, like you said, if I block somebody that I actually like, a lot of it is I'm trying to keep myself from continuing to yell. So if I block you, then I can't yell at you.
No, but I've told you, Joe, like when we had an issue the last time, I would want you to call me. You even have my number. I would say, call me. If you have to yell, yell. I want to hear you out, but I want you to hear me out. Like, don't be like, oh, I'm going to get mad. He's going to be butt offended. I'm not going to get offended. Like, just say what you have to say. I honestly want to hear you. But remember, I might say something you might be offended to as well. And I can be extremely offensive, more than anybody in here.
No. Well, see, one thing, Paul, though, if sorry, Galen, I just wanted to address something Paul said a second ago. If you notice, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, when basically Kate was going to like relitigate the 2016 election.
Yeah, you just checked out for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'm like,
I've done that a few times over the years. Just like, you know what, heard this before, don't need it. Gonna go have a bite, take a shit, whatever.
Because I know that she's never said anything new about the subject, and I didn't agree with her the first multiple times, so I'm not going to agree again, and she's not going to hear what I have to say. So I'm like, I'm just not going to. I'm not going to tempt myself because I know if I stay, I'll say something. So I just go.
Sure. Yeah, and that makes sense, And to be honest, I would much prefer, no matter whether it's you or anybody, if it gets to the point where they're just about to explode, to just check out and come back. You know what I mean? It's better than either that or just turn off the camera and seethe for a minute, and maybe count to 10 or whatever the fuck. I don't know, but like, end of the day, we're all adults, and I think there's enough respect that no matter how much we argue, it should always be all right.
Yeah, unfortunately, StreamYard doesn't have a squelch feature.
Right.
See, because like you can either like you can't temporarily tune somebody out. It's like, oh look, I just don't want to hear what she has to say. Let me know what she's done, or vice versa. They can do it to me too. And that's one thing though. I would say I've never been offended by anybody blocking me. I might have been sad because then now I have no way to reach them and potentially make amends or whatever. But I'm always like, yeah, look, if you can't deal with me, that's cool. That's the right choice.
Well, I have a solution sometimes that I do, and I even was more concerned, not actually with you, Joe, when I have actually like gotten to an ugly argument with you. when I get sarcastic, I was like, I think Joe's going to be more angry if I'm going to get sarcastic and mock him back.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No, but you know what? When I did that to you, you didn't. You just came back and laughed at me, and you were like, "Okay, it calmed you down." Of all people, you were actually laughed. You were laughed, and I was hardcore, like viciously mocking you back. Okay, and I wished I would have done that with Paul. I should have just gone back years ago with Paul. I should have just met it with humor, and I felt like I have a friend, and he always says he's this big Tolkien fan. And he's always going, when he gets really upset in all the groups, he always says this one thing. He says he gets really pissed off, and in a corner, he'll go tell everyone, go kill yourselves. And it's stupid. And I always tell people, don't get offended at him. Just tell him, make a Tolkien joke back to him, like, with like, the whole thing of like, you just don't go tell people, like going into Mordor. You just can't just go do that. Like you play a meme back to him. Like you just we should take a little hint of humor at each other. Like when Raven had said something ugly before, I should have just met it with like humor, like years ago, like instead of being pissed off. But I know also Raven is just gonna like not even think about it later. Like, what? Oh, I said something. Like what?
Well, to your point, Galen, my friend Tony that I was on with earlier, we had like a real like screaming match over. I don't even remember what it was, and it was stupid. I was being stupid. He was being stupid. So a week or two goes by, and then I call him up, and I'm like, asshole one, asshole two, over. Two idiots spotted for arguing over bullshit. And then he laughed, and then we were everything was cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I think-
what else were you guys talking about tonight?
Well, we at the beginning of the show, Joe, before you got here, we were talking about the fact that Beach died a couple of months ago. Did you know that?
Oh, whoa! I did
I
not know
found out.
that.
Mike told me last night.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. I think you were off mic at the time. You were on screen, but off mic at the time. I think you might have
Yeah.
been making dinner or something. But
That's what I was doing.
yeah. But no, Beach apparently died a couple months ago in his sleep. He had been unwell for some period of time. And the reason Michael said that it took so long for anybody to find out is because all of the people who cared about Beach died before he did. So there was no one to really let anybody know.
I have to say, I said this to Mike, and I'm going to say it now, and it's mean, but I don't care. I feel relieved. Beach threatened to have me swatted. I actually still have the video. He put a video up on YouTube saying this. I still have a copy of it.
Wow.
And because he was trying to get to Puka, and he literally said in the video, he says, I want to get him. And he says, I'm willing to step over. Even I said, I don't care if I have to step over your corpse to do it.
Wow.
So
I remember that. Yeah, that's right.
And basically what I did was because he was friends with Brian and with Vicky, and I'm friends with them obviously. So I got with them, and I had a talk, and I basically said, I don't know what's up with him, and I guess his brother died, and he had come in some money, and so I guess he thought he was flush, and I was like, he has to understand that I got way more resources than him, and I got 6 lawyers in the family, and I will bury him legally if I have to. And then he took the video down. But I actually went to the local police, and I went to the FBI.
Well, I guess now, like you said, it's a relief because now he is legally buried.
That's right.
Dear.
Because even though nothing came of it, obviously, it was always in the back of my mind that, look, this person, who knows if he gets a bug up his ass and decides he wants to do something again. So anyone who threatens to have me killed and they die, I'm relieved.
I understand. I want to say something about him is that I had some interesting conversations. We did not ever get along, ever. But we talked. He always wanted to hear what I had to say, though, even though he knew I couldn't stand him. He actually would come out and ask me. He would even come into Stickum. I'd be sitting in there with like Ben Caruth and Terry. That's Nuclear Night. I had all this like wide eclectic people, and he'd be like, "Come on, I'll be good." And I said, "Look, I don't partake to drunks, And that's one of the problems with him, is that he was not a rational actor, because when he would get drunk, he would rage and say stupid and do stupid things like what he was doing to Joe. I'm not making apologetics, but sober him, which happened at times, would not be doing that kind of behavior. The behavior that he would be engaging in that was nasty, that is when he would be a raging alcoholic, and it was just utterly unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, because I remember about the drinking problem, but I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. But that does kind of fit into everything else I know. I mean, we all have a mutual friend, I think, Tiger Lily, and he was particularly shitty to her.
Yeah.
And that almost, that whole incident, which I won't elaborate on, but that almost made me question my friendship with the guy. But at the end of the day, it wasn't any of my business, and it wasn't likely to happen again. So I decided to let it go.
I actually confronted him on his alcoholism, and we had a talk about this before and after his brother died. It was like, this is going to kill you. And he even accepted it would, and he was depressed. He even saw it as a form of suicide, and I parted ways. We didn't talk. He still tried to get in touch with me over the years. He was very cordial. He knew how to approach me and all, but he understood that I didn't want to. I wished him well, and I was cordial with him back, but he always kept pursuing me, even up to the last couple years ago. And I haven't heard from him in a while, but he every year he would try to pursue me, but I was just like, I'm not interested.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, he was better when he was sober, but look, he was a racist, he was a sexist, he was abusive, he was worse when he was drunk, but no, he was nasty, and like and basically part of what he had against me was it was in Hate Club. Well, it was one of the things, and he was being nasty to Abby. Abby was one of the nicest people in the fucking universe.
Abby Normal?
Yes.
How could anybody be nasty to Abby Normal?
Exactly. He was being nasty to her and being nasty to Puka. And I fucking popped a cork and I just went off on him. And after that, he had a fucking big bug, instead of just realizing, hey, you're a drunk asshole and you're being abusive and that's not cool. So then after that, then he had a hard on for me. And then like I said, he wanted to get Puka so bad. It was weird because basically Puka said something, but I was the one who really teed off on him, but he was more angry at Puka than at me for some bizarre reason. Because I think he liked me at one point. And
Say it isn't so.
Was it?
Say it isn't so, Joe. That you popped a cork.
Yeah, I know, right? That never happens.
One of the issues going back then is that, and still today with people, is that I've always told people, like, you're talking about being nasty. I would always tell Beach the problem with a lot of people that I had is like, you can say criticism. I don't mind you criticizing anyone. No one's off limits, including myself. But you don't have to be nasty. Again, like what we talked about hate club before and malicious behavior, because there's the intentionality there that is just grotesque.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems of the community back then. It was a grotesque. I mean, I would have to say it was an evil community of people back then. A lot how people acted was just atrociously garbage. It's reprehensible.
Well, it's the thing. I mean, that's why he was another one. I'm like, look, I like Skep, but he and Beach, they love to wind me up because they would bring people in, wind me up, and then they would sit back and watch me eviscerate them. And I'm like, and then I realized they were using me to hurt other people, and I'm like, that's not fucking cool.
Skeptical heretic?
Yeah. Alex.
Yeah, that guy would not interact with me. I actually approached him with some of his nasty behavior, but he would not engage me. He literally hid from me, and I've never actually spoken to him. He would not engage me. There are a lot of people like that I would come knock on the door respectfully and nothing, just nothing. But
see, I like Skep because he had that sardonic wit, and he could just he had sarcasm down to a T, and he could just roll off it just flowed, and he was funny. And we met him, Raven and I. He came down for the New York meetup.
Yeah. So he had that, that accent. It was like a Mack truck.
Listen, friends, I want to wind this show up. I got to get back to my domestic duties here. I can hear shuffling outside my door, which is usually a sign that I need to go get busy with Mom. I do look after my mom. She needs her medications and everything like that. So I'm gonna cut the show off. I guess we've come to a good lull. And I want to thank you all for showing up, and thank everybody in the audience for hanging out with us and being so good-natured and not trolling us yet again. This is a nice thing. So
could I say one thing?
Sure, please do.
Based on the issues we talked about, I think there's this one, call it my South Park or Jerry Springer like moment at the end of the show. I just wanted to add that one thing that came out of this show tonight, of this discussion, was that there are a lot of words that we're told not to talk about our subjects that mean a lot, that are real people who are hurting. There are real situations, and they affect all of us in this world. And those are real people just because they're somewhere else in the world. Right. Those are real people with real homes and real blood in their veins. And we should care about other people. We should be empathetic to their issues. Even when we disagree or we have a different perspective, we need to understand different perspectives. Look beyond the arrogance of our own assumptions. I mean, there's so much we kept saying, oh, I assume this, I assume that. I kept hearing that tonight. We need to look beyond those assumptions and to be more open-minded. We could all do better.
Amen to that. Yeah. And that is a good note to end it on. Thanks, Galen. But I think you're right, though. And I need to open my my mind as well. But I don't want to open it so far that things fall out, right, Joe? All right. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you.